Hello, and welcome to Greet the Week. I'm Mona Duncan, and today we're going to be talking about ask, don't tell. Um, just a few thoughts here, and on asking as opposed to telling. I mean, have you ever told someone what they did wrong, and how open were they to finding out what you were saying? And then what about have you ever tried to stop someone going down from what you perceive to be a destructive path? And then maybe, what were the pitfalls of that? What is the underlying message when we try to tell someone what to do? Does it come across as being something that we can help them with, something that, it kind of breaks down the relationship? It becomes more destructive than helpful. So I think about frequently the question that Dr. Glasser uh, asked, and it became the relationship question for us to continually think about is what I'm doing, is what I'm saying, is the attitude I am using, all these kind of things. All of this is what I'm getting ready to think, or, you know, is it drawing us closer together or is it driving us further apart? And that as we can really begin to be aware of what we're doing, what we're thinking, how we're acting, and how we are expressing and getting the message across to someone, will it be receptive or will it be off putting? And so, in looking at, again, is it connecting? Well, why don't you? So, if someone said to you, well, why don't you this or that? Is that connecting or is it disconnecting? Or if someone says to you, if I were you, I would. And again, is that connecting or is that disconnecting? And then possibly, well, have you thought of, or have you ever considered, or maybe something would be there for that. So, just a few things here on looking at self evaluating. I'm curious. Did you not? Oh, talking about whenever I was working with the prisoners, uh, and they was how their life had changed, and they were going to go out and help kids that were into criminal activity or that were using drugs or whatever. And so I would ask them, so I want to know something. Whenever you were, younger or before you were convicted by we the people that you need to be incarcerated for an X amount of time, that I'm curious, did anyone in your life try to warn you? Try to be a partner that would come on side and say, let's do something else as opposed to what you're so currently involved with. Um, that tried to warn you. And so the question is, once you were warned, did you immediately see the light and begin to change your ways? Oh, yes, 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 I see. Or, uh, and now that you've, changed a little bit and you're beginning to see life a little bit differently, so do you want to work with the at-risk youth? Do you really think that telling them will help anything? Again, is it going to be helpful or is it going to be hurtful? Is it going to be relationship building or not? And what is the underlying message we give people when we try to tell them what to do? And we may be saying, well, Mama, that's what you're doing now. You're trying to tell us what to do. I am trying to make some suggestions, yes, that we think through and make it as a suggestion rather than as a directive. And then how can you become relatable? If you are going to help with the at-risk community, that's wonderful, but then in a way that is relating with them, that they might can understand. So here's some suggestions to go along with it, is to ask for permission to give suggestions and then respect their wishes. And a few years back, I was working with an organization, and there was 5 of us that were in leadership there, and we had a monthly gathering, of talking about what was coming up and what we were doing and so forth. And so one of the leaders was giving out all kinds of directives. And anyway, I spoke up and said something to the effect of, may I share with you what I'm seeing might be not compatible with, the suggestions that you're making? And his answer was no. Okay. Okay. I will be quiet. I will not say anything. And we went ahead with the meeting and so forth. And then a couple, 3 weeks later, well, not later, not that long, it was a couple, 3 days later, I got a phone call. And so I picked up the phone, and it was the boss, the one that had, didn't want to hear my suggestion. He says, okay, I'm listening. What do you suggest? So we need to respect where another person is coming from, even if they are not so engaged. So do not give the answer before the question is asked. We must agree that there is a problem before we're willing to explore or an answer to it. So just, blatantly telling someone this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, this is what's wrong, they can just, turn you off completely. And then we must see that we are vulnerable before we're willing to set any boundaries. We need to see that, there what this person is saying may have a lot of validity to it. And whenever we begin to see that, we can begin to see things that we're not really seeing. It's the metaphorically, it's the, oh, okay, I get the idea, I get the picture. And then when we conclude on our own, when we come to the, yes, I want to do this, no, I do not want to do this, we are more open to receiving insights and they become easier for us. And then giving us specific feedback will reinforce the behaviors we are teaching, as if then we give an example of it. This is something that helped me at one time. And then I find that most people are open to feedback if it's not forced upon them. You ask the question, you ask for to give feedback, and if they're not up to it, then obey or comply. And if you find resistance, change the subject and move on. Don't get angry and frustrated and huffy or anything. Just continue to work with making that relationship more viable. And then ask pertinent questions to get the person thinking in a new vein, such as the purpose in asking self-evaluation questions is not for the individual to rattle off all kinds of statistics or whatever. It's for them to begin to think about it. It's for something for them to, whenever we're not together, something for you to think about. And then the purpose is to give them something to privately consider so that they can come to a conclusion, but they don't necessarily have to vocalize it. And a couple more suggestions here. To focus on self-evaluating versus feedback, rather than saying, this is what I see, this is how I anticipate it, this is blah, blah, blah. What is your feedback? What are you seeing? What are you self-evaluating? What do you hope to accomplish through this particular action? What are you doing to help meet this goal so that you can continue there? What will you do if things do not go as you assume they will? And sometimes we can have these assumptions that backfire on us. And then what else can you do? And what resources do you need? And establishing a benchmark of some sort. That as you help establish a point of reference, then the person can begin to gauge their own behavior. And the more thought-provoking the insights are, be they questions or just regular comments, the more effective the individual is in self-evaluating. So, leaving the decision up to the individual regardless of the consequences. What is your motive when advising another? If their input is favorable, rejoice, wonderful, wonderful, but don't take the credit for their decision. You may have given the information to them. You may have, you may have given them an actual directive, but it's not effective unless they buy the ticket and go get on the bus, unless they begin to look at it and see how that is what will work or maybe will not work. And if they ignore the principles and continue down a spiraling pathway, have compassion for their misery and continue to be an encourager. And then if they ignore the principles and, continue to be an encourager, which was the last, and never give up, never give up, never give up. Leave the light on. I'm here for you. So always remember that we want to carry the message, not the person. We're not carrying them. We can help you. Each person is self-determining, even if they choose destructive behavior. The message is you must do it yourself. I care, but I'm not doing it for you, and I'm not carrying you, and I'm not being responsible for what you choose to do. I can give you tools, but I cannot use them for you, and I cannot make you receive them. It goes back with the axioms of the only person we can control is us, but let's do it in a way that is not tromping on someone else, but making suggestions for or asking for information. The message is there is help, but I will not force it on you. The message is, so just the closing thought here. What is the best way to help? Is it telling someone what to do, or is it asking them a question that could be relatable, that would help them to be accountable for what they are going to do or not do, and that also may bring some growth or some insight? As you learn to ask those thought-provoking questions, it will help to lead the individual to self-evaluate personally, whether they speak it out or not. It begins to take an inward as we help them to, we're asking for information, we're asking for their input, we're not giving it to them to load them down or to burden them. So as you learn to ask those provoking questions, it will lead them to be more accountable. It's about helping the person come to terms with who they are and or who they want to be. Maybe who they are right now is deficient of who they really want to be. So as they can come to those self-determining things themselves, and then having an encourager along or someone to help them. So I thank you very much for being here for those thoughts, and I'll stop the recording, and many blessings to all.